Okay, in this fourth lecture for our unit on natural resources, I wanted to talk about the natural resources that we find here in the state of Tennessee. Tennessee is relatively well known for its zinc deposits. Zinc is an element that goes into a variety of industrial products like paints, rubbers, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, plastics, inks, soaps, batteries, textiles, and electrical components. So as you can see, it's basically found in almost everything that we use. Um, Tennessee is one of the leading states for the mining of zinc. As you can see here, there are very few other states that have active zinc mines. So Tennessee has two, and then there's only one other in the north, in northern New York. Zinc comes from the ore deposit called sphalerite. Sphalerite is actually a type of zinc sulfate. So this material is enriched. Sometimes it can actually be accompanied inside limestone bedrock. Here is a mine just east of Nashville in Carthage, Tennessee. And the mine will oftentimes use a column or room and pillar structure. Well, they will dig out a large room underneath the ground and in the sphalerite deposit. And then they will leave these pillars of the less concentrated rock to act as supports for the roof in order to prevent any type of collapse. There are oftentimes monitors that sense whether or not the roof is starting to break or no longer hold the weight of the rock itself. And so that would give miners sufficient warning if there was any type of collapse. Other types of mining that occurred in Tennessee, not currently, but in the past, copper was often mined in Tennessee, most famously in a town called Ducktown. This town got the name of nickname Copper Hill because of all the copper mining that occurred from the 19th to the 20th century. Unfortunately, this mining involved highly toxic and very damaging sulfur dioxide byproducts. This material was released into the air and basically led to a destroyed environment for miles around the for miles in many directions around the mine. And so ultimately, and thankfully, the mining there has ended, and it has undergone a massive environmental restoration project. So thankfully, the environment is starting to return in this area, but it definitely could be seen for miles and miles around. It is said that the astronauts in the space station could actually see Ducktown as a giant red spot on the landscape in southeast Tennessee. Aluminum ore, it was also famously mined here in Tennessee. Actually, it was mined elsewhere, but then the material, the raw ore, was brought to Tennessee in order for it to be processed. The processing of iron ore involves subjecting the mineral bauxite to high degrees of electricity in order to remove that aluminum from the ore deposit. Um, Tennessee had abundant cheap energy from the Tennessee Valley projects and their hydroelectric dams. This electricity was then used in that aluminum aluminum process and was able to then be shipped out once the aluminum had been concentrated. So bauxite is where the aluminum comes from, and a lot of that bauxite was processed here in places near Knoxville. Alcoa, the city where this was occurring, is actually named for the company Aluminum Company of America. And so this just sort of highlights just how prevalent that process and that concentration of that natural resource was. So these materials, even though they sound relatively common like zinc, copper, or aluminum, there is an ever increasing demand of this material in our world as more and more of this material is used to create all the products we know of today. There are non-metallic natural resources that I want you to be aware of. This includes materials that we use every day. Sand and gravel are by far the largest amount of materials that were needed in our society. This creates the roads as well as the foundations for various building structures. In particular, though, we're going to talk about cement and dimension stone. These two products help us create a lot of our society's infrastructure. So just to reiterate, aggregate, sand and gravel is the most used material, and it is a $70 billion industry to get this material and to provide it for the roads and the different purposes like creating cement. Cement is actually is an ingredient that goes into concrete. When we think about concrete, it is actually a combination of 41% of that gravel or crushed material. It has 26% sand, 16% water, 11% cement, and 6% air. All of these materials come together to create the process by which concrete can be developed. Concrete really requires a key ingredient from limestone. Limestone is roasted into lime that then helps to create the cement. The cement is the glue that is sticking together, that sticks all of this material together. And so we need all of these different ingredients to create concrete, which we then use throughout our society. Dimension stone, on the other hand, is something that we use for building as well as things that we use in our homes, in our decorating, such as the countertops or flooring that you might have in your home. So here is a worker sort of measuring out some of this dimension stone. Looks like this is a marble with some very nice or maybe it's probably a granite or some type of metamorphic material that with really great foliation patterns to it. Yeah, famously, Tennessee marble is actually a limestone. Tennessee marble was used as a dimension stone or a building stone throughout the 19th century and into the 20th century. Some famous places include national monuments as well as large buildings in places like New York City. It was marketed as a marble because people didn't want a limestone, they wanted a marble. Tennessee marble is actually a limestone. It didn't go through that metamorphic process to create marble. Instead, it is just a limestone that has not fully undergone that transition. The marble limestone was shipped out from Tennessee on the railroad systems to various places that was then used for building different structures. Grand Central Station in New York City contains Tennessee marble that gives it that beautiful pink color if you've ever been inside there. Unfortunately, the prevalence and appeal for Tennessee marble really decreased in the 1930s. Afterwards, this material was no longer really used for building because of the rise of concrete. The rise of concrete really limited the need for very expensive marble and other building stone. Now we just have about 6 quarries in Tennessee that are operating in the Tennessee Marble Company, and in general, they are largely focused on the more decorative production of the more decorative stones that might go into your homes or businesses.